sorcerer. A real-life, honest-to-God sorcerer.
Will Byers just admitted something that should terrify you, because in episode 5, Will finally says it out loud. I'm not like a second L. I don't have powers. I'm siphoning, I'm stealing Vecnas.
We got our second L. I'm not like a second L. I don't have powers. I'm siphoning, I'm stealing Vecnas, and to do that, I have to be near the hive mind, and Vecna's not coming back.
That line is not character development. That line is a rule. It means Will isn't powered. He's connected. And if he's connected, Vecna can use him like a cable, or worse. Vecna can build more cables, and episode 5 tells us exactly how many. 12. Okay, let's keep this simple. Most people think there are only 2 types of supernatural people in Stranger Things. You're either like 11, you have powers, or you're normal, you don't. But episode 5 breaks that idea in half, because Will sits right in the middle. He's not strong, he's not gifted. He's a receiver, a human antenna, and they literally call him that. Drive him around like a human antenna. That's not a joke line. That's the show telling you the mechanic in plain English. Will is not casting magic. He's picking up a signal, and that signal belongs to Vecna. So when Mike and the others start trying to label Will like it's a D&D character sheet, wizard, sorcerer, it almost feels cute, like, aw, the kids are still doing the D&D thing. But Will shuts it down. Because he knows the truth. He's not getting stronger, he's getting closer. And that means his power has a range limit, just like a spell, just like a tether, just like a warlock in D&D. Now, if you don't play D&D, here's the easiest way to understand it. A wizard is like a student. They study, they learn, they train. That's 11. A sorcerer is like a battery. The power is inside them. That's how Henry was born, and how Kaylee hints she was made. But a warlock? A warlock is a phone that borrowed somebody else's charger. It works until the charger gets pulled out. And in episode 5, Vecna doesn't just pull the charger, he yanks it out of the wall. Because Will admits another key rule. He can only siphon Vecna when he's near the hive mind. So the group doesn't say, let's train Will. They say, let's get him closer. That's why they start talking like engineers. They're not building a weapon, they're boosting a connection. And this is where episode 5 gets insane, because the plan they choose is basically dark magic dressed up as science. They take a dead Demogorgon, and they decide to pump it full of electricity. They literally compare it to Frankenstein. And think about what that really is. They're using a corpse as a focus, a conduit, a spell component. They're trying to wake up the hive particles inside something dead. So it becomes a living relay tower. That is a ritual. It's not just gross, it's smart, and it works for a moment. And that moment is the proof that changes everything. Because Will doesn't just sense something. He doesn't just feel sad and point north. He actually hijacks. He gets in. He finds the network. And for a brief second, he takes control. That is the scariest part. Not because Will is dangerous, but because it confirms Vecna's system can be hacked. Which is why Joyce drops the single most important line in the whole episode. Stab him with his own sword. That is not a random phrase. That is D&D foreshadowing. In D&D, Vecna's story always comes back to betrayal, to an inside man, to a cursed blade, to the idea that Vecna doesn't get beaten by more power. He gets beaten by his own system turning on him. So Joyce basically hands you the ending theme. Beat him using his own connection. And episode 5 proves the connection is real. But here's the catch. The same scene also proves something else. Vecna can kick Will out instantly, like a server banning an account. So Will isn't becoming the hero. He's becoming the access point. And if Vecna is the one controlling the access, that means every time Will uses the power, Vecna learns. Vecna maps the route. Vecna sees the back door. So now ask the question episode 5 wants you to ask. If Will can siphon Vecna's power, what can Vecna do with Will? And the episode answers it, right in the opening scene. Vecna looks at the kids in his prison and says the word that should make your stomach drop. Vessels.
Because they are weak. Easily broken. Easily reshaped. Controlled. The perfect vessels.
He calls them weak, easily broken, controlled. Perfect vessels. And then later, the show does something very sneaky. It connects Will's mechanic to Vecna's endgame, because Max and the others realize the kidnapping is not the goal. The kidnapping is the setup. Vecna tells them he's using the children to reshape the world. Let's translate that into normal human language. Vecna doesn't want 12 hostages. He wants 12 batteries, 12 amplifiers, 12 living extension cords, which is why this number matters so much. All 12. It's said like a checkpoint, like a ritual circle snapping shut, like the last candle being lit. And here's what makes it even darker. Vecna isn't just stacking bodies, he's stacking minds, because minds are easier to sync, easier to manipulate, easier to tune. That's why Will was the perfect prototype. Will is already wired into Vecna's frequency. He's already proven he can carry the signal. So when Vecna says vessels, what he really means is repeatable design. And episode 5 gives you a countdown. November 6th. It's the day it ends. That's not a spooky prophecy. That's a deadline. That's a cast time. That's the ritual finishing date. In D&D terms, this is when the big spell goes off, and the party is racing the clock. Now, here's the part where episode 5 plays like a real D&D session. Because the group doesn't have one clean plan, they have two, and both are messy. Plan A is the smart plan. Rebuild the tracker with Mr. Clark. Slow, safe-ish. Plan B is the we're going to die, but we might win plan. Electrify a dead monster and pray it works. And they literally say the kind of stuff you hear at a table. No bad ideas. They're basically throwing darts because they don't fully understand what they're touching yet. And that's where Dustin's shield generator moment comes in. Dustin explains this lab like a dungeon room. He uses Return of the Jedi. He says, protective energy shield. Shield generator. He's doing what Dustin always does. He's giving the party the map. But episode 5 twists the knife. Because what they think is a shield is actually something else. They look at that sphere and assume it's dark magic. And then the warning hits. It's not dark magic. It's something else. If you destroy it, you will die. Everyone will die. That is such a DM moment. That's the party reaching for the glowing orb. And the DM saying, are you sure? Because once you break the wrong object in a dungeon, you don't just trigger a trap, you collapse the whole room. And in episode 5, Nancy already fired. So the consequence isn't coming later. It already started. Now, quick side note, because this is another D&D style clue hidden in plain sight. The episode keeps doing name magic. There's a moment where Mike says Vecna, and someone reacts like he just said a forbidden word. Vecna? I didn't say that name. How do you know that name? That's classic fantasy logic. Names matter. Names mean knowledge, and knowledge means power. And episode 5 keeps reminding you that Henry and Vecna are not the same thing. Even Henry says, hello, my name is Henry. The show is pushing a theme that the identity is part of the weakness, which matters. Because if Will's power is a tether, then the way you break a tether is not by punching it. It's by naming it, by exposing it, by turning it against the owner. And that brings us to the final piece. The quick reference that changes how you should hear Vecna's speech. Because by the end of episode 5, you might think, okay, Vecna is just mind controlling these kids. Number. He's selling them something. He promises the light. He tells them they're special, that they have dormant powers, that they'll become heroes. He's not just forcing them to obey, he's making them want to. And if you know D&D, that's the difference between a spell that controls you and a spell that binds you through a promise. A devil bargain. a Gaius, a quest you think you chose, and he seals it with the most important line in the episode. Because tomorrow it begins. So here's what episode 5 actually did. It didn't just give Will a new ability. It revealed Will as a connection, a living cable, a backdoor into Vecna's system, and it revealed Vecna isn't building an army. He's building a circuit, 12 vessels, 12 amplifiers, 12 chances to reshape reality. And if Will is proof the siphoning works, then those 12 kids are not victims. They're spell components. Which means the real question for the finale isn't, can they beat Vecna? It's, what happens when Vecna gets 12 wills and flips the switch?
She's always been a real jerk.
Used to be cool. Like that time she dressed up as an elf for our Elder Free campaign.
4 years ago!
Just saying.
Later. It was a 7.
Huh?
The roll, it was a 7. The Demogorgon, it got me. See you tomorrow.
Stranger Things, Vol 1 was supposed to be bad. Not because the writers forgot how to write, but because they were running a Dungeon Master's playbook. And Vol 1 is the part of the campaign where the party keeps failing rolls, arguing about the plan, and wasting time while the villain gets stronger. And that is exactly why so many viewers felt annoyed. The slow pacing, the awkward conversations, the moments that feel like plot armor, the weird sense that the story is stalling instead of sprinting. What if all of that is not a mistake, but the structure? Let me show you the Dungeons & Dragons campaign framework, hiding in plain sight, and why Volume 1 had to feel like a grind for Volume 2 to hit like a critical success. Act 1, the setup that traps the party. In a real D&D campaign, the Dungeon Master does not start with the final boss. They lock the players into the world first. They remind you who you are, what you can do, and what you are scared of. Then, they drop one big problem on the table and force the party to react. That is what Volume 1 feels like. It is not trying to deliver payoffs yet. It is doing the unsexy job of re-establishing the rules and the tone, because the finale only works if the audience understands the board. That is why Volume 1 is full of scenes that feel like setup. People reconnecting, people debating, people explaining what changed. In D&D terms, this is Session 0 energy. The table is aligning. The party is being reformed. Session 0 is boring if you are not the one playing, but it is essential. So when viewers say nothing is happening, the D&D answer is something is happening. The DM is building constraints. Act 2, the frustration phase, failed rolls and slow clues. Here is a rule good DMs live by. If you want the finale to feel earned, you cannot give the party the solution early. You make them search. You make them test theories. You make them argue. You make them chase false leads. Not because you hate them, but because effort creates investment. So campaigns have long investigation stretches where the fun is not combat. The fun is tension. Who do we trust? Which door do we open? What is the plan? And who is going to mess it up? Volume 1 plays like that. Heavy on conversations, heavy on movement, heavy on information gathering. And if you came in expecting non-stop action, it feels like a downgrade. But in D&D, this is where the DM is quietly doing 3 things. First, they are draining resources, not just weapons, emotional resources, trust, confidence. The party starts second-guessing themselves. Second, they are establishing threats that cannot be solved with one hero moment. That is how you stop the story from becoming one character, saving everyone every time. Third, they are setting up the twist that will make everything before it click. So those complaints start to look different. The sluggish pacing becomes travel time. The DM forces the party through the map because the map matters. The awkward dialogue becomes party debate under pressure. Players do not talk like screenwriters. They talk like humans trying to survive. And the plot armor moments become what DMs call soft fails. Characters live, but they lose something. time, safety, a clue, a friend, momentum, which leads to the core idea: failing forward. Good DMs do not stop the story when you fail. They redirect it. You miss the shot, therefore the monster escapes. You fail the check, therefore you get the clue, but it costs you time. You make the wrong call, therefore the villain gets a free move. Volume 1 is built on that feeling. Every win is messy. Every plan has a cost. Every moment of relief gets followed by another problem. That is not sloppy writing. That is the dungeon master keeping the table sweating. And most campaigns have one more ingredient that makes the middle act hurt: the early villain encounter. The party meets the big bad too early. Not to win, to lose. The purpose is to teach a brutal truth. You are not ready. Your normal tricks do not work, and the villain is not impressed. That is why Volume 1 can feel hopeless. The DM is raising the stakes, so the final battle does not feel like a routine fight. It feels like survival. In other words, Volume 1 is the chapter called Humiliation. And humiliation is what makes the comeback satisfying. Act 3. What this structure tells us about Volume 2. If Volume 1 is built like a D&D campaign, it tells us something simple. Volume 1 is not the story. It is the setup for the story. It is the part of the campaign where the party learns the rules of the dungeon, where the DM shows you what the monster can do, where characters make choices that feel dumb in the moment, but become the reason they win later. That is why Volume 1 can feel like it is stalling. It is intentionally adding weight, so the finale has something to explode off of. It also tells us what Volume 2 must deliver for this to work. 1. Volume 2 must cash in the clues. If Volume 1 planted mysteries, Volume 2 has to answer them cleanly. In D&D terms, the DM stops being vague and finally shows you the monster sheet. 2. Volume 2 must turn soft failures into hard wins. The party needs a moment where a plan actually works. Not perfectly, but clearly. A real turning point. 3. Volume 2 must complete character arcs. The entire reason you sit through slower roleplay episodes is because you want the emotional payoff when someone finally makes the brave choice. If Volume 2 does that, the audience will look back at Volume 1 and say, okay, that was the price of admission. But if Volume 2 does not do that, then Volume 1 will feel like filler forever. So here is my take. The Duffers are not just referencing D&D with cute monster names. They are using the actual campaign rhythm: setup, investigation, failure, early villain encounter, cliffhanger, then the finale where the party rolls their best dice. Which means your frustration with Volume 1 is not proof it was bad. It is proof it worked. Because the DM wanted you uncomfortable. The DM wanted you doubting the plan. The DM wanted you begging for the payoff. Now the only question is, do they stick the landing or do they fumble the final roll? If you enjoyed this breakdown, subscribe for more Stranger Things theories that actually use the rules of the game the show is obsessed with. And tell me in the comments, what was the moment in Volume 1 that felt the most like a failed D&D roll?